Bum, 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 ba-da-dum. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni-Viewer, and these are just my quick, unscripted thoughts on Marvel's The Avengers: Age of Ultron. It's coming out this weekend. I got to see a preview on Thursday, and you know what? Definitely worth it. You definitely need to see it. I'm going to share a few of my quick thoughts. I'm going to go into some detail. I won't do any spoilers, don't worry. Let's see. Now, obviously, this movie has a certain reputation to live up to because the first Avengers was so well received. And the first Avengers, that was the experimental phase. That was, can a team-up movie work? And we determined that it could. Now we have to determine, can it be done again? And I'm happy to say that Age of Ultron does prove that the team-up movie still works, and Marvel's Cinematic Universe still has a lot of steam left. So, more individual aspects of it. This plot is packed. I mean, there is so much that's going on in Age of Ultron. Right from the beginning, it drops you into stuff already happening. In fact, beautiful opening shot. The very first thing we see is a single take action shot. Remember that scene from the Battle of New York in the first Avengers? That's all one shot going from hero to hero as they fight the Chitauri. It opens like that, only bigger. So much bigger. Everything in this movie is bigger. Joss Whedon has said in the interviews that the story is smaller and more personal. He's a bloody liar. He's right in terms of the story, at least, with the individual characters. That's more personal. But, you know, the Avengers mostly took place in New York. Every major thing happened there, or on the helicarrier that was flying somewhere. This, you start off in some made-up Eastern European country, and then suddenly you're back in America, and then you're back in Europe, and you're in Korea, and it goes all over the map. But in a good way. It feels like it's a global event. The sort of thing that the Avengers would need to assemble for. Not like there's a villain that's terrorizing this city. I think one hero can take care of that. No, this is a global thing with all the heroes that needs to be done. And it works quite well. It just works quite well. So, the plot is packed, as I said, and the weird thing about it being packed is that it doesn't actually feel like it's too packed. Like, you know how some movies feel like they have way too much going on? Like, holy crud, I came here for one simple story and now I have to keep track of all these 500 different subplots. Well, this movie has a bunch of different subplots, it's true, but it balances them. It's all well balanced, if you'll pardon me being repetitive, and it does a good job of not making you feel overwhelmed. It's not like, oh god, I can't remember what happened here, or did we meet this person already? I think we did, but now I just missed something while I was trying to remember it. No, you won't get lost during this movie. The characters definitely are improved here. Not that they were ever bad to begin with, but like the standout in this movie, believe it or not, is Hawkeye. You know how Hawkeye hasn't really gotten his due in the movies just yet? He had a brief cameo in Thor where he made some Mystery Science Theater 3000 style quips at what was happening, but then didn't actually do anything. And then in the first Avengers, he spent most of it mind-controlled and just didn't really have a whole lot of development. We didn't know who he was, why we should care. Age of Ultron fixes that. Good lord, does it fix that. Hawkeye gets some of the best scenes, the best dialogue. There are surprises with his character. Like I said, this is not a spoiler reaction. So I won't tell you what those surprises are, but they do so much to make him a better character. Also, the witty, humorous parts aren't just exclusively to Tony Stark anymore. Tony Stark was mostly the guy who made all the sarcastic quips and silly little bits of dialogue, which, that suits his character. But now everyone gets more of a chance to do that. Like I said, Hawkeye gets some of the best lines. But that means that the humor and the wit of it is more evenly dispersed in typical Joss Whedon fashion. Now, one thing that I'm sure a lot of people have been wondering about, the relationship between Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff. Yes, that is a thing. They are sort of... They're not a couple... I don't want to get into too much detail because I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but it is... They are having a relationship of a sort. And some people I know have been resistant to that idea because in the comics, if Black Widow is going to be paired with anyone, it's either with Hawkeye or Captain America. Which, that's fine. But I don't mind the whole relationship with the Hulk thing because it's something different. I mean, you can't just take everything straight from the comics and throw it on the screen. You got to do something new. And pairing Black Widow with the Hulk is something new. So, and it's weird the way they get it to work. At first you think, those two? I just don't see it. It's weird. But, again, explaining any more would be going into spoilers. But, like I said, for some bizarre reason, it just works. And of course, have to talk about the villain. Have to talk about Ultron. Now, let's see. Up to now, the one biggest criticism that even fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe have been regularly saying is that it has some pretty weak villains. Loki has always been good because he had a well-developed character. He was written as sort of an anti-villain of sorts, more sympathetic, more understandable. He had the most to do. He had a personal connection to one of the heroes. So, and of course, Tom Hiddleston was brilliant at playing him. But everyone else just didn't quite reach that level. They either weren't active enough in the plot until the very end, or they had no connection to the hero beyond something incredibly tangential to the point where it's almost not important. Or they were just the mindless drones that were fighting the bad guys because we need to have someone to fight. So Loki has been the gold standard for a while. Recently, the Netflix Daredevil series gave us Kingpin, who definitely gives Loki a run for his money, but in a different way. Loki and Kingpin aren't really comparable because Kingpin is a more serious figure, but the Daredevil series is for another day. We're talking about the movies right now. Everyone's going to see the movies. Not everyone is going to see the Netflix show, though you should. So Ultron works. Ultron is definitely one of the best villains of the MCU. James Spader, first of all, perfect casting choice. He is so... I mean, if you've seen James Spader act, you know what he can do. And the fact that he is portraying an entirely CGI machine does not change that at all. Trust me. Ultron is still very intimidating and surprisingly very funny. He has some great lines of witty dialogue too, like that are almost like sarcastic and mocking every other supervillain ever. Because it's not that big of a spoiler, but there's a moment where the Avengers are confronting him in a particular place. They ask him what he's up to, and he says something to the effect of, "I'm glad you asked, because I wanted to take the time right now to explain my master plan," and then just goes right into attacking them like, "Yeah, you thought you were going to catch me monologuing? Guess what? Tough." And he gets such great moments. He's almost, again, I don't want to spoil too much, but he's like, how do I describe him? He's very complex, I guess. As much as that might sound like hyperbole, you just have to experience Ultron. And he's definitely the most active villain ever, because he literally possesses every single machine. You see a robot on screen, that's Ultron. Doesn't matter. So he's the most involved villain of the MCU so far. He's very well rounded. He gets a full, he gets his due. It's not like he's built up, and then only gets a little bit at the end, or turns out to be nothing. He really does get the treatment that a proper big-scale villain deserves. He's not as powerful as he is in the comics, but that's a good thing. In the comics, based on what I understand, he's practically godlike. Like, so much more powerful that you almost think that beating him feels contrived no matter what the result is. So, making him a bit more grounded, that's good. Because you have to have a villain who is powerful but not insurmountable. So, also, of course, the twins, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Now, let's see. They have a more standard, formerly villain but turns into hero when they realize they're doing the wrong thing kind of plot. It's not mind-blowing in that regard, but they are well played. The actors playing them have great chemistry. They had good chemistry in Godzilla. They have good chemistry here. They're not necessarily in it as much as you think. But they still get their due as well. Again, I don't want to give away too much. Now, what else? What else can I talk about? I didn't see it in 3D. I should specify that. I did not see it in 3D. I didn't really see anything in the 2D version that made me wish, oh, I so wanted to see that in 3D. Forget about 3D, okay? Let it die already. You won't be missing anything by seeing it just traditionally flat on the screen. Aha! Battle between Iron Man and Hulk, where Tony gets the Hulkbuster armor. That's a really big action scene that's been built up a lot. You're probably wondering if it delivers. It does. It's interspersed with another action scene with the rest of the Avengers going after Ultron, and I won't say anything more than that, but it is definitely the sort of fight that we've really been looking forward to. Like, for some reason, Marvel loves to have its heroes fight each other more than fight its villains, which is probably why it doesn't have that many good villains. But watching Tony Stark and Bruce Banner fighting in that city with Hulk going out of control and Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, definitely the fight you were waiting for. They do so many crazy things with it. Full-on kaiju battle, basically. Closest the Marvel Universe will ever get to Pacific Rim, I'm thinking. Unless somehow they can work out a deal to adapt the Godzilla comics and bring in Red Ronin. I think that's what it was called. But anyway, so... excuse me. You might be wondering if I have anything bad to say about it. There are only a couple things I can think of, and they come very early on. the movie doesn't really bother with setup is the biggest thing I could say it doesn't quite do right. Like, for starters, you may remember that throughout Phase 2, there have been certain things happening that, are pretty big game changers. At the end of Iron Man 3, I'm going on the pretense, of course, that you've seen the other Phase 2 movies by this point. The end of Iron Man 3, Tony Stark is no longer being Iron Man. At least that's how it seems. End of Captain America the Winter Soldier. S.H.I.E.L.D. has dissolved, and presumably everyone who used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., including Black Widow and Hawkeye, you would assume, is now under investigation by the U.S. government. The only thing that Age of Ultron deems as worthy of mentioning is the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is still dissolved. Black Widow and Hawkeye are just part of the Avengers now. No indication that they've been under investigation or somehow absolved from it or anything. Tony Stark is obviously still being Iron Man. He's got new suits, he's got drones. No explanations given. No, we're getting the band back together kind of thing. The Avengers still are. That's how it opens. So, that's... I'll elaborate a bit more on my thoughts on that in a moment, but the other thing as far as lack of setup goes is Ultron himself. They don't really go into the details of how this basically sentient artificial intelligence came into being. He's just sort of, they've got this artificial intelligence they've been working on, they're trying to figure it out, and then suddenly it figures itself out, and then suddenly it's confronting the Avengers, and then suddenly it's hatching its evil plans. It happens really quick. I think Ultron's awakening scene only lasts a minute, if that. But I call that nitpicking, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. Now, why do I think that? Because it doesn't matter to this story. As far as reassembling the Avengers, we already had a movie devoted to getting the team together. We've seen what that's like. Don't need to see it again. That was the first Avengers movie. All we care about is seeing the Avengers back in action. And you assume that's what they do. There's a global threat. They're going to go after it. That is their job. And as far as Ultron goes, as far as his development, I'm okay with them being quick with that as well, because the interesting part about Ultron is Ultron. They could have gone into the ins and outs and intricacies of how the technology was developed and what went into creating the specific algorithm that suddenly granted this machine sentience. But who cares, honestly? That's not what we're interested in. What we want to see is not how Ultron is developed, but what Ultron does once he is developed. And, the more time you spend explaining where Ultron comes from is less time for Ultron to be Ultron and be doing stuff. So, I'm sure there are some people who are going to be really bugged by it. I don't think it's that big of a deal, because while I was watching the movie, those things bothered me at first, but as the movie progressed, I didn't care. And why should you care? This is a movie about what Ultron does, not where Ultron came from. This is a movie about the team stopping him, not the team getting back together and determining how to stop him. So, yeah, I don't think they're that big of a deal. What else? I should say something about Vision, because there's been a lot of mystery surrounding him, and like I said, this is spoiler-free, don't want to give it anything away, but when Vision does show up, it's pretty good. Vision has some good moments too. He's a more solemn figure. There's a certain element to him that they're definitely playing as Christ-like, which I know sounds weird about a purple and green robot with a gold cape, but somehow it strangely works. He is definitely meant to be a very Christ-like figure, and he gets some good moments too. Different from the other characters. Also, something that should be mentioned is that Guardians of the Galaxy's influence has apparently stuck, because Age of Ultron goes further into the comic book strangeness aspect. It's not trying to be grounded at all. I remember seeing a trailer for the new Fantastic Four reboot playing before this movie and thinking, I can't believe that I somehow fell into a time warp and it's still 2005, where dark and gritty and realistic is the new standard. This movie, Age of Ultron, it just goes for it. Much like Guardians of the Galaxy did, it goes for it. The strangeness, but the good kind of strangeness, I should specify, is just full on in there. It's not trying to be realistic, doesn't give a flip whether or not you care it's realistic, and as a result, you buy it. You don't care that it's unrealistic, because the movie treats it as such. It's not one of those, well, we're gonna be so totally sarcastic about it because that makes us cool somehow. No. It says, this is all realistic. You know, deal with it. We are treating it as real, you treat it as real. So, and it works. It is sincere about it. I'm definitely curious to see where things go. Ant-Man is going to be a tough follow-up for this. I have no doubt that Ant-Man will still be good. I don't know how it's going to measure up to Age of Ultron, but I guess we'll see in a couple months. Anyway, just wanted to share my quick thoughts with you. Not that this was quick looking at the bar down there. But anyway, you should definitely see Age of Ultron in theaters. Two-dimensional. I hope you all enjoy it as much as I did. Till such time as we meet again, this is the Omni-Viewer signing off.